The New York Knicks just ended a 53-year championship drought, and yet almost nobody believes they can actually do it again.
I'm going Spurs. I'm going Spurs winning the championship next year.
How much does capturing a championship help you as you move forward to defending that crown, knowing what they're going to have to go up against next season?
Starts with Leon, goes to Mike Brown, goes to Jalen, the rest of these players. I think they're smart enough.
At first glance, it makes sense to doubt the Knicks again. Nobody repeats anymore. The league has too much talent, too much movement, too many financial restrictions, and too many teams waiting for their opportunity. But what if I told you that the Knicks did not just win a championship, but they may have accidentally recreated the blueprint that launched the last dynasty? Not only did New York win 2 trophies this year when no one expected it, they also produced one of the strangest and most dominant postseason runs the league has seen in years. Against all odds, the Knicks marched through the playoffs with a 16-3 record and won 9 consecutive road games. Then, when they finally reached the finals, they ran into a San Antonio team that many people already believed represented the future of the league. Victor Wembanyama looked destined to become basketball's next face, while Dylan Harper appeared fearless as a rookie. But it didn't matter. Jalen Brunson responded with one of the greatest performances ever seen in a final. He scored 45 points, poured in 13 during the fourth quarter alone. He even erased a 16-point deficit on the road and tied Michael Jordan's record for the most points scored in a finals-clinching road victory. And by the end of the night, Brunson had earned every single finals MVP vote, and the Knicks had secured a 94-90 win in San Antonio. This was great and should have been enough. After all, teams don't usually survive 53 years of frustration and immediately start talking about defending their title. But it wasn't enough for everyone to stop doubting the Knicks. However, when closely observed, the Knicks season seems quite familiar. You see, back in 2014, the Warriors made a decision that many people thought was reckless. Mark Jackson had inherited a struggling franchise, developed Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, built a defensive identity, and won 51 games. Instead of rewarding that progress, the Warriors fired him. Steve Kerr arrived 1 season later, inherited the culture Jackson established, adjusted the offensive system, empowered his assistants, and immediately won a championship. What looked controversial at the time eventually became the first chapter of a dynasty. Today, we're seeing the same happen with the Knicks. Tom Thibodeau took over a franchise that had spent years in mediocrity and turned it into a legitimate contender. He delivered multiple 50-win seasons, restored toughness, reached 4 postseasons, and guided the organization to its first Eastern Conference Finals appearance in 25 years. Yet, after falling short of a title, the Knicks fired him and Mike Brown became that coach. But instead of forcing players into rigid roles, Brown spent the season figuring out what version of this team was most dangerous. He reduced workloads for key players, experimented with different closing lineups, used Karl-Anthony Towns as a playmaking hub, encouraged Jalen Brunson to work more frequently off the ball, and allowed OG Anunoby to become the connective tissue between both stars. He coached the regular season like some lab, willingly accepting short-term discomfort if it meant discovering answers that would matter later. And once the postseason began, a roster that already had championship-level talent stopped feeling like a collection of good players and started functioning like a complete basketball ecosystem. Now, when the Warriors won their first title in 2015, nobody called them a dynasty. At the time, people assumed they had simply caught lightning in a bottle. But they had 2 key things that served as the bedrock of their dynasty. And the Knicks have those 2 things as well. First was an A1 dude. For Golden State, that A1 dude is Stephen Curry. Interestingly, no one considered him an A1 dude until he won the title. He just shattered conventional wisdom about what a championship centerpiece was supposed to look like. Jalen Brunson has proven he can do that for New York too. Not by dominating every possession, but by becoming exactly what every title team desperately needs. Someone who can rescue broken possessions, manufacture offense when defenses take everything else away, and remain effective even when the ball isn't in his hands. Mike Brown understands that kind of player better than almost anyone in basketball. He spent years alongside Stephen Curry in Golden State and watched firsthand how championship standards are established. Mike Brown believes Brunson has also set a powerful standard in New York, too.
He understands what winning's about. You know, he comes and he probably takes a pay cut that I wouldn't have taken. Every time they would have thrown that number in front of me, I would have said no, and I feel like I'm a good guy. So he set the bar before he even stepped on the floor. Every time it came to renegotiate a deal with him, so that set the standard.
And just wait to see how this might impact the other key thing that might lead to the Knicks defending the title next season. But before that, it's worth noting that Brown's point goes beyond contracts. Championship teams eventually develop an internal standard where sacrifice becomes contagious. Once the best player in the organization willingly gives up money in pursuit of winning, everyone else loses the ability to prioritize comfort over championships. And Brunson already made that choice before New York won anything. But then again, people are not the same, and things don't always go as planned. Most times, success immediately creates problems. Role players become too expensive to keep, veterans leave for larger opportunities, and front offices spend the summer trying to replace contributors that helped them become champions. The Nuggets lost Bruce Brown. The Bucks watched important pieces disappear over time. Even the Warriors eventually learned that keeping everyone together becomes impossible once enough championships pile up. If all goes well, the Knicks shouldn't have that problem. At least, not yet. Brunson is still under contract. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are still under contract. Josh Hart remains locked into one of the friendliest deals among championship contenders. And Miles McBride, Jose Alvarado, and Gershon Yabusele are expected back as well. Karl-Anthony Towns is a major conversation though, and we'll get into that soon. Another uncertainty is Mitchell Robinson. Robinson proved his value throughout the postseason, providing rebounding, rim protection, and physicality whenever Mike Brown needed another big body next to Towns. The problem is that Robinson also showed the rest of the league he might be too good to remain a backup. He averaged just 14 minutes per game during the playoffs and appeared in 18 postseason games. But there are several teams around the NBA desperate for starting caliber centers and willing to pay accordingly. New York may simply reach a number that no longer makes sense for someone expected to play behind Towns. Landry Shamet and Jordan Clarkson are easier decisions. Shamet unexpectedly became an important part of the playoff run, scoring in double figures 6 different times and helping the Knicks string together 13 consecutive playoff victories before finally losing Game 3 of the finals. Both players were useful, but they just aren't part of the core, so they are not irreplaceable. What matters is that New York already has the difficult part figured out. So there's no doubt that for the most part, the Knicks might keep all their stars, and now they have championship experience. According to someone who knows Jalen Brunson better than almost anyone in basketball, they may also have something even more valuable.
It starts with Leon, goes to Mike Brown, goes to Jalen, the rest of these players. I think they're smart enough. I think they're humble enough that they're going to look at this and say, okay, Jalen Brunson isn't going to go underestimated anymore. All right, we're going to have to adjust to that.
The truth is winning championships often changes expectations. Opponents prepare differently, fans expect perfection, and players suddenly become household names. But Jay Wright doesn't believe New York's players are looking at this championship as proof they've reached their ceiling. He believes they're looking at it as proof they still have another level to find.
Towns has developed into a passer and a defensive player. He's got to get even better at that. And Anunoby has developed into an even better offensive player. He seeks mismatches. He's starting to put the ball in the floor. He's got to get better at that. I think if they all look at how can we get better, I think that championship really pays dividends for them in close games in the playoff time.
Only time will tell if the players will get better, but Las Vegas doesn't waste any time letting us know they don't believe the Knicks can do it. For all the excitement surrounding New York, sportsbooks still open the Spurs as favorites to win the 2027 championship at plus 250. Oklahoma City sits right behind them at plus 260. Boston checks in at plus 550, and the defending champions are all the way down at plus 650. Part of that skepticism is understandable. The NBA hasn't had repeat champions since Golden State. 8 consecutive seasons have produced 8 different winners. And modern roster building only gets more difficult once championship bonuses, luxury tax penalties, and apron restrictions start piling up. Plenty of fans around the league are already predicting completely different finals matchups next season. Others simply believe San Antonio is destined to come back stronger.
What about the Spurs winning the NBA Finals next year in 2027? They're a plus 250.
I'm going Spurs. I'm going Spurs winning the championship next year. I'm going with San Antonio.
I'm going to go
man.
with you. Let's do it.
You rolling with me, cuz?
That's
All
safe.
right.
And honestly, that isn't a ridiculous opinion. But there is one problem with nearly every argument against New York. Most of them require somebody else to improve. And right now, the East is a scary mess. The Boston Celtics are favorites over a Knicks repeat. However, after a lot of drama, Jalen Brown has moved to Philly. But then, they were able to get one of the Knicks championship pieces, Mitchell Robinson. He recently agreed to a 3-year, $47.4 million deal to move to Boston. Then we have the Bucks, who have lost Giannis Antetokounmpo to the Miami Heat. As for Indiana, they seem to be waiting for Tyrese Halliburton to fully recover. But while the Eastern Conference continues trying to reinvent itself, New York just needs to keep all its core and keep growing, and that luxury is very valuable. As for the West, OKC might still represent the league's most complete team. The Lakers and LeBron James have parted ways, leaving Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves to lead them. Then there's the Denver Nuggets, who are yet to make any major moves. Minnesota should be healthier, and who knows what having LaMelo Ball around will do for them. And then we have the Spurs, who will be looking for revenge. But championship windows don't usually close because opponents suddenly become unbeatable. They close because eventually someone has to get paid. And that's exactly the problem for New York, who have already lost Mitchell Robinson. If they want to launch a title defense, they have to keep their remaining core together. The Knicks are already operating just a few $1 million below the first apron, so there is trouble looming. Although they sold Mitchell Robinson, the repeater tax penalties are still a major problem. And then there's Karl-Anthony Towns.
Cat is eligible for an extension. 4 years, $272 million is available. What are your thoughts on that?
That contract would rank among the richest deals in league history, but it would put the Knicks' finances in the red. Regardless, most players in that position don't hesitate, but the Knicks can only actually do a repeat if they can somehow keep him.
And do you think the Knicks need to keep Cat and Brunson together?
Yeah. Keep them together.
Because we now know what that looks like as a duo, meaning the pick and roll. We know what it looks like when you're featuring Jalen Brunson.
Keeping Brunson and Towns together sounds simple, but actually paying for it is another conversation entirely. But maybe they don't have to pay and still keep him possibly.
You willing to take a $100+ million pay cut like Jalen Brunson did to keep this thing together?
We can keep it all together. If we can keep it together.
Right.
Show me then. We all gotta get in the room and say we're gonna do it.
Right.
Championship teams survive when sacrifice becomes part of their culture. But can New York stars prioritize keeping this group together over maximizing every possible dollar? For 53 years, Knicks fans spent every season wondering if they would ever see another championship. Now, they're entering a summer where the question is, can they actually win it again? The last dynasty to repeat didn't announce itself when they began. They simply won once, convinced everyone it was a perfect storm, and then spent the following season proving it wasn't. The New York Knicks might actually do it, but do you think they can? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see what Kobe Bryant said about Jalen Brunson, watch Kobe Bryant was totally right about Jalen Brunson next.